Hello everyone and welcome to my oil painting class. And today we are painting inside the interior of the Basilica Cistern in Istanbul, a Roman structure where they used to keep the water, save the water, preserve the water will come up the columns. I'll tell you a little bit more history about it as we paint. On the screen, you might see my picture very, very dark, almost black-like. But the more you start looking into it, we see that gorgeous turquoise, emerald greens type of colors. Loads of darks. I'm not going to paint it as black as that. I picked up a kind of a neutral gray background. Maybe a darker version would have been even better. So if you've got your background mixed with a bit of white, blue, a bit of green, tiny bit of black. So if you've got a slightly darker, more into the blue or into the green, it doesn't matter. But so we'll give you that lovely backup for the colors we'll have. Now on my palette I have some white, Payne's grey, black, kind of bluey black, emerald green. There are loads of other versions of colors which might be similar, like Iridian or phthalo green, Windsor green. So that's any of those colors will be fine. Cerulean, ultramarine, and some violet. Now, let's start with the composition. Let's start with some of the planning. Now, the composition could be more of a square. So I'm actually going to trim my picture just to make it a little bit close to the square. If you decide to do more elongated piece, or even look another way, even a landscape way for your canvas, for your board, that will be exciting. So it's the rhythm of the columns. That's what we'll be looking at. Right, another way. So if we decide to go for more of a portrait way, we can also trim our picture and make that view slightly narrower. And we can decide how much or how little of that space we want to bring. I think something like that will be quite nice. So I might just put my tape a little bit more over. The reason I still have that bigger square space, I quite like that little element. So to use a composition directly as it is on a photograph, or possibly add something to it, might be quite fascinating. I think if I were to make it somewhere here, I know I'm not going to see that lovely little view at the back, but also if I were to put another piece of tape this way, okay. So that gives me a narrower black volume of black on one side and slightly wider part of the column on the other side. Right, I'm going to start sketching now with my tips, and I'm going to go straight away go for some of the emerald green. Just going to dilute it here. Okay, and on its own, it will look quite strong. So if I were to use a little bit of violet with it, or you could have gone for a bit of black, it just makes it slightly not as bold if we don't want that overwhelming volume of green. So I can see what's happened. So it's kind of bluey green, more darker turquoise type of color. Right, so I'm going to start now. There are loads of things to look at.
Julia,
Yes.
I think I'm going to put some white in mine.
Okay, yes, yeah. If yours is too dark, or your background is too dark, yes, pick up something with a little bit of white so you can see that. Good idea, Liz. Well done. Good thinking there. Absolutely. Mine is too light for anything with light in there. Right, so I'm interested in the rhythm of columns and shapes. But perhaps the most important space between those shadows and that rhythm is going to be this left-hand side space, okay, where we can see more of the range of columns at different distances. We can see part of the ceiling, some of the capitals of the columns. And if we start from that opening, I think that will be really good for us. Now I can see a tiny bit of a reflection on one of the columns close to us, so I can just mark it. So this is the border of my paper. This column where this little darkness is probably in the shadow, but I can make that column a bit lighter. I can see it's a separate column because I can see the capital of it at the top, okay? And there is another column here, okay? And there's a narrow one here, so I might just do it like this. So that might be number one. That's probably a much wider column, but we can't quite see where it is, okay, because we finished. So that's another column, and that's another column, okay. So let's plan that somewhere approximately here. Okay, how much space we want. I might decide how much of that space is going to be out. That helps me out. Again, one more column is quite wide. Oops, the other way around. Wider space for the empty area, okay. And this one is just a little bit off center, so that's more in the center for me. Let's see if I mark it all together here. Okay, that's better, giving me enough space for this area where I want to stay focused. Okay, we've got a very narrow one here. Some of you who painted woodlands with me with some pine trees, we did similar kind of planning of rhythm of the trees, identifying some shapes. Okay, and I think I can make, now these lines are provisional lines and they will become more obvious, and in some places they will disappear to keep our interior soaking into the darkness and then appearing with that lovely light. Okay, so this column, it's growing almost from the floor into the ceiling, but there is actually a base for it where it's on the floor of the basilica. There is some water. So if some of you read or listened Dan Brown's book of Inferno, so it's featured, the place is featured really well. So they raise the water level these days, not too much, maybe a foot or so, and they do lovely concerts in there, and the lights are very wonderful. Different range of colors come up at different times, and it just creates that beautiful echoing interior, and very mysterious interior, and that's what we're focusing on today. So perhaps that water will be for this column. Not sure where it's going to be here. I might just leave it for as it is for now. Right, and my other column is here. This is the widest column, but we only see a section of it. Not like it overly matters if it is wider one or not, that it's all a big shadow, but I might work into some of the texture of it or do a little bit of details which we just about can imagine or just about spot if we really look really close. Okay. Right, next. Within so I've got a wider gap and a narrower gap, okay, here. My lines are not perfectly straight yet, but I think once I start adding other elements with color, I will make them a little bit more working together, becoming more straight. Right, so I've got a wider gap between the columns and slightly narrower one for that's part of one of the reasons. Now these two shapes are almost similar, if not identical, but we're going to have another darker column here, and that will almost like double the size of the shadow here. Okay, we'll have more light on that column as well, but it will create that extra dark space. So as we're on here, I'm going to plan a little capital, the round top for the column, and a little round finishing top here as well. Something looks quite dark on the top, might make it keep it quite mysterious. Okay. And if I look carefully, somewhere approximately here, I can also see it got this column and this column. They're similar size, so they will be of a similar height on the ground and a similar height on the ceiling, so I can almost connect them together here. And that's how I can see where that base is going to be. Okay, now every single column in Basilica Cistern is different. Some of them are a little bit similar, but overall they are all different because they were collected from different parts of the Roman Empire and brought to Istanbul, well, Constantinople then, okay, as a new capital of the new Rome. So this is going to be my another column here. Okay, that's where I might need to make adjustments for my this column, not to make it too, they need to be of a similar width probably. So if I'll just make adjustment to my wider most left column, okay, not going to be much difference because it's all in the shadow anyway. Okay. And this one at the base is lit up, so we can see its base and its reflection. Is it too tall? Let's have a look. Maybe a little bit tall. I'll just drop it a little lower. Okay. Some columns are very, very simple. Some are more complex with most elaborate decorations. Some of them, the main bodies of the columns got very elaborate decorations as well, not just their tops and foundations. Okay, just gonna keep it a tiny bit more straight. And I'm going to keep that shape, yeah, parallel here. And what we have for the capital here, we almost have a box which was softened in the corners, so I can see a little bit of a corner here. Okay, and the top of the column is round, bulging a bit more up. Okay, because we're lower, so we see the oval above. Okay. And then this box is almost got straight vertical lines, and then they go around. Okay, this is a little bit more diagonal. And a bit more. Okay, oops, you can't see it, sorry, just glanced. Let's see if I can do it with my eyes. Okay. So found perhaps just looking at the edge of my column on the left, where that line is going to be quite close, yeah, if I were just to drag it up, not quite in the center, and that just helps us to build this box. Okay, dropping a few lines down. Okay, and then it just roundly connecting to the top. I just did that because it's a bit messy. And that will lead to some sort of arch, and I just lead it out. And if this column got that box top, this one got some sort of similar shape, but the angle might be different, but also every column got different top. So quite often they're all different. So this might have a very round top, and we don't see anything those borders. So I'm going to keep it as it is. Perhaps there might be that corner somewhere here, but I might just keep it just as it is, simple design. Okay, and if there are any arches coming out, they will be going the same way. So perhaps they might be leading here, but it doesn't matter even if they don't. Right, I'm just thinking of lowering this one, maybe higher. Just give me a moment so I can stabilize the light. Right, so we can see things better now. And let's look further now. So we've got our base, just going to double check it's a similar height. Okay, so the base, we might see it close. We might just see quite a lot of reflection there. So I might just put it all together as a reflection, right? Reflection from this column, reflection here as well. So we're starting to have a lot of vertical lines. Find a bit more paint. And next I'm going to, so I found my first column of that shape of that silhouette. I can count how many more there. 1, 2, 3, possibly even 4. But it doesn't matter if you have more or less, yeah, plus minus, you have 3 more extra ones or a little bit more. I'm going to find the space, almost like the silhouette of the wall of what it is at the back. So I'm going to ignore all these columns. What I will know is that each base of the column will start going slightly higher and higher and higher. Maybe those distances will go. I haven't decided where they're going to be there yet. Okay, how they're going to start going vertically in here. Well, I'm going to find that little gap between our darker column here. What I'm going to do, not to get it all mixed up, if I were to paint my middle column darker, so then we know that is not just a line. Okay, that's going to be our shape. More of a visually recognizable shape. Okay. And the space, again, if I were to link it, the space of the wall, what we can see in the distance, far distance, If I can link it to one of my sides of the pictures and link it to the base of the column, we can see, yes, sort of to one of these shapes. It goes a little over the foundation, yeah, the base, and tiny bit higher, so perhaps somewhere here. Okay, just give me a little reference. So that will be all my floor space, okay? And the space is finishing somewhere here. And again, against my column, approximately halfway through. Okay. And then I need to fit another 3 or 4 columns in here, just vertically, just putting some of the lines, okay, perhaps much more narrow at the back. I'm just putting some verticals. I haven't decided which line is going to be what yet. But it's easier to, within a small space, within a lot of narrow strokes, just to put some verticals. And as I started to put some of the protruding shapes, I'm going to make this one as a darker area as well for my column. It will have some light in it, but that's my column which stands out on the side here as well. So they will just start slowly coming in. So I would have said I could make a perfect line for them. And I could have said we can make a perfect line for them connecting there. But they're not always quite perfect because of the different sizes, and they're adjusted. The walls and some of the arches adjusted to them. Some of them got extended blocks of stone. So this just gives us an idea. Okay. So as I've done a few horizontal lines on the floor, might just say, right, where I'm going to have my perhaps first base, I might just make it a tiny bit darker so I can see it a little more as a silhouette. Okay. Another one might have light, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. Another ones will be so small we can't even see them probably as much. We might put a lovely stroke of color in there. For the capitals, that will be more exciting. Now, so if we've got about 4 columns to fit in, it means that we need to find 4 capitals for it. The further away they are, the closer together. So we can start with a little capital at the back. I might just do a little dab for that. Okay. And then I need to find a little closer shapes. Okay, that's close together. That's getting a tiny bit further away, but not too far. And maybe one somewhere here. So these distances become bigger and bigger. Okay. And that becomes perhaps, okay, that's gone too far. Sorry, folks. That's going to be somewhere here. There we go. Ah, I can see what it is. It's not quite as straightforward perspectives. We've got all these ones going. Okay, got it. So our shape in the middle has a lovely, it overlaps other columns which are really clustered together, and it's give us a lovely arch of the darkness. So we don't need to know much about it, but that it will give us a lovely darkness here. And I might just lower it a little here. Okay. And all of these columns, they actually give us arches going towards us. Okay, so if I were to put my arch that way, but it wouldn't really matter which way they're going to go. They're still creating a similar perspectives. So next one is going to be, so this one is right next to this. Next one is going to be somewhere right here. And it's going to give me a similar arch. Okay, but because there are all sorts of things going to be here, we're going to just work with lovely color and simplify shapes. I just do some more of these so we can see what's happening there. Okay, this one is a bit back here. I'm just moving them next to each other. And I think I have created a wider space than I needed, but that's okay. And then this one, if they would have been all lit up equally, we would have seen them better together, but they're actually not. The lights are spread very differently, deliberately, to create some exciting vibrancy, exciting drama, mystified atmosphere. So things like that will be happening here. Okay, I'm happy with that. Very suggestive. So one of these columns. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this main one was my 5th one. Okay. And then all these columns will have reflections all the way down as well. And then what we can see somewhere here in between, you can pick up one of the columns we have of a similar size, of a similar kind of approximately placement horizontally. Okay. And again, so we'll have some sort of arch over it. Yeah, it's kind of coming towards us. So they're all connected between the arches, between us here, and then between themselves, they all have arches. Okay. And then this column is somewhere here. It started playing with the light as well. I might find the base for it somewhere here. Okay. And all we're interested in, oh, we've got a capital, fantastic, we'll have some extra light in it. Oh, there is a lovely line, arch line. It must be going somewhere this direction. There's another arch of some sort. Where that arch is coming, how it's joining elsewhere, it's not too important. We've seen fragments of things, so adding a little bit more of a direction, that's what's interesting. And on the gap, so this is my other column. Okay, and in the gap between that and my last shadow, I can see something a little lighter. I can just see a little bit of direction. Perhaps it's capitals, perhaps it's arches, perhaps it's something else. So nothing to worry about there. So, and on that, I don't think it's we even need this line. It will be just more of a light. I'm going to stop my drawing. I'm going to play with my tones next, and then, well, some of the basic tones. And then, so if you made your 3 columns, the left, the middle, and the right, slightly darker, that's fantastic. Even if you're painting on quite a dark background, that's really helpful. Okay. I'm going to make sure that that my columns are dark as well. So I'll use a bit more intensive violet and emerald green combination, maybe more into the violet, so it will stay quite intensive. Because we have a lot of darker colors today, the larger the range of subtones of the darks and subcolors, the more exciting your work will become. We'll deliberately exaggerate some of the light and bring some extra medium darks. Okay, I do like when I paint columns, I tend to go for some vertical lines, but then I tend to give it a little diagonal, almost like a sketchy line. It gives me the understanding of it's round, or at least it's more of a flatter color, yeah. And then I can work into perhaps getting some highlights or a little bit of. If you just put some vertical lines, it doesn't look quite right. The moment I just give it a little more of a shading look, it becomes much more, not just flatter as a structure, as a pattern, but often it does give me the extra volume, almost like the ovals or the imperfections of the main body. Okay. Any other darks? It's this one. Because it's narrow, I might keep it as it is, just as a line. And also I'm going to make darker my some of the tops of the columns. Now that's definitely a column all the way. I think that one is partially a reflection and partially is a column. So I might finally give it a little identification what that might be. I think that might be my little reflective surface as well. Okay. Right, so any other darker shapes at the top? Okay, and then just put in a little line connecting the shadow to the column at the top. Gives me a tiny mini arch. I might keep that. I can't see it on a photograph, but I think that will be something exciting. And can I make the the base of the column here? And perhaps left-hand side of the column slightly darker. If you just place your brush and press on it, then you can stop and start, and you've got much more control of how wide or where you want to carry on with your line. There you go. Then it gets a little bit more straighter line. And I'll continue with its shadow, with its reflection in the water. Okay. I can see what else I've missed. And next to this column, we have another shadow. That's why drawing and planning our composition in shapes is easier than just a drawing. So I'm going to add, that's why I was talking about my column, these columns are a little bit spread out, a bit wider. Okay, I'm going to add a little extra space somewhere here because I can see another vertical standing here. And they become almost as unity together. In our painting, we can separate them and make one slightly darker than the other. Okay, if your board is quite dark, still stay with these colors a little bit similar. But for other shapes, we're going to start adding a little bit more light soon. So then I can start finding light out of the darknesses. Right, anything else we can make darker? Perhaps some of the columns almost like next to a lighter part of the neighboring column got like a darker silhouette. Okay, and some of them don't. And then there is another row which might have something darker. Again, the same how we paint trees. It's a little bit of different, that the rhythm you need to really look for. The light is playing all the time. Okay. And so is the shadows and reflections. These are actually reflections. Okay, this is a reflection here. I'm gonna make a reflection all the way to the top here, leaving a little highlight so I'm not going to lose that body of the column. This shape could have gone even taller, but I think I'm happy to keep it where it is. Sorry, I think this one could have been a little bit taller to give more space to these shapes to develop in height. Okay, maybe I'll lift it up. No, it's connecting well here. No, so I'm going to keep it here. Just talking, exploring within myself, yeah, what that light is going to be. Maybe just put it in a little bit more darkness and see what it's going to look like. Okay. Right, any other darknesses? So this time I'm going to start adding a little bit more light. So small amount of white, and perhaps let's stay more into the cooler, bluer side. I'm going to paint the backdrop between my smaller column here. I'm going to go for a little bit darker ultramarine and emerald green, but mainly ultramarine, more staying on the blue side. Okay, the white is there just to make it slightly different, especially if you have a very dark background. Okay. So we're gently starting to bring the light. Okay. Now it's going to be more important. If I've got a tiny little gap between my verticals, I might need to make sure that I fill it in. Your columns will start getting too narrow and too wide. Don't worry about it. Just think about, okay, what's going to stay more lighter than others? What's going to stay more darker than other shapes? So I'm almost going for my medium tones. So if you've got a darker background, you're probably going to be working within the same darkness as your background, just varying the color. So I might see some more of that medium darkness reflecting in the water and the floor. Yeah, and this one looks as it's reflecting the shadow here as well. That's a mysterious playfulness of the painting today. Can make it just a tiny bit more darker so I don't get it mixed up with my medium darkness. Okay. Good. Right, then let's start picking up some greens. So now I'm going to mix my white with some emerald green and go for something in the medium darkness. Probably just emerald green on its own for now. Medium to light darkness, and I'm interested in starting to find a little bit of light, not still full light, but a little bit of light, which tells some of the outlines of columns, perhaps. Maybe a little bit of, I'm almost like painting some of the sections of the interior in block. Okay, I can see that little arch. Okay, can I paint all of that together? Can also give me an idea to kind of to spot that form a bit more. Okay, maybe next one I'll paint partially. Might have a little bit more darkness in the middle. Just picking up my darker blue and emerald green just to make it a little different there. Okay. Okay, let's keep on going with our green. Let's find some of the columns, partial light, and then they're getting lighter towards the base. But for now, I might just keep it as it is. This one's got some lovely darkness, and then it just gets slightly lighter. So just stretching some of the color. Okay, maybe this one will stay partially light. Okay, and I might just continue. We've got something above, something below. Not all reflections totally follow the same way or the same length. Some of them get a little more obstructed by other shapes and shadows. Okay, this one might have some more light. I think all this could go paler, I think. And then I'll find more highlights within that area. I did put an arch there earlier on, but I think I might simplify the shape and its location and make it a little more darker above. So something shape-wise. We haven't got a full story told of what it is, how it is. And the little exciting things, I've got a tiny little lighter line. It almost looks like it belongs to this column. That's nice. Right, any other lights? Getting it a little bit more white. And again, this column got some more light towards the floor, but it will be not enough light if I just keep it as it is. But I'd like to start adding an extra color which we don't have on our palette yet. So I want to work with my blues and greens before I'm going to get a little bit of yellow or even lemon yellow if we have some, but not yet. Okay, and this still medium emerald green, or partially. That's, I keep mixing my emerald green and other colors on painting, bring tiny bit of blue to it. Okay, that's going to be a lovely lit up area, but in between that's going to be something lighter, not overly super light. Lighter reflection in the column, maybe tiny bit darker border next to it. I don't expect you to be able to follow every single stroke I'm making here, but what I'm interested to pass to you is that range. If I've got something light, would I have something next darker or lighter, even more lighter, or just a slight hint of variety of darkness, maybe change of color. Okay, and that's how we'll be tweaking nuances, how that will start creating our atmosphere here. Okay, make a little connection that we're dealing with the water on the ground. What I've just done here, I put a horizontal line under my column, and I could just smudge a little bit off. That's that to give me an idea. It's water. It's watery, very still water. Yeah, you can do that now, or you can just do it later. If it's a very dark area, we can put tiny bit lighter mark. If it's quite light area or medium area, we could put something darker. Okay, I'm just looking for anything else medium darkness before I start adding my lovely extra highlights. I know these areas for me look quite light, so I'm going to block them in. So they're no longer so vibrantly light. Again, perhaps tiny bit of blue with my emerald green to make some of the in-between shapes slightly darker. Or continue using your violet with emerald green. Okay. I need to stretch this one, yes, perhaps just a little more longer shape rather than too bulky short one. Now I can see I can make a couple of my shapes tiny bit more darker where my paint is still quite pale. I do like that transparency to it. You might not need to do it if your top of the column is already dark. Okay, I just have that little connection to darkness. Okay. Just very suggestive, different heights, different spaces where we are. I need to put a little bit of extra dark on my column here, and with oils, the softness of the paints smudges the blend. Look how gorgeously round that column became, because I just smudged and I've just put a line over really, but it's my brush caught the left hand side and the right hand side of previous colors. Okay, and I might do my wider column. I just give it a little highlight instead of painting it extra dark. If I'll add a little bit of white, or maybe make it slightly cooler, maybe if I'll go for cerulean rather than the green. I'll go for cerulean. There is a bit of green there, but mainly cerulean. So a lovely medium dark blue. Just want to see how it will be next to my other lights here. So if the darkness wise it will be the same, that's fine. Just make sure that the color is changing. That's why I was thinking of cerulean. Okay, as I already have quite a lot of dark paint, that light doesn't sit very easily. But if I persevere, and that light doesn't have to go from top to bottom, you might just have that little connection. Might just been lit up in that middle part and then it stops. Maybe a little bit more light in the middle of this part as well. Okay, just that wobbling out a bit. Started to have a little bit of a belly. Okay, that's quite messy strip. I'm mixing my brush color, that cerulean blue, with my existing color, and then I can put my cerulean back, so then I could have an effect of a little more light. Okay. So maybe something like that I was looking for. And then the rest of our lines will be totally fine for now as they are. And then we'll be actually blending back to our emerald green and violet. Magenta direction where it's all soft. Let's go for that effect of a darkness of the column, but not a direct. Not a direct shadow. Light is there, but it appears and disappears. If I want to sharpen my light, I'll put a shadow on the column next to it. There we go. Suggestive effect. Let's bring a little bit of yellow. Now, what I'd like us to do next. Now, if you were painting on a darker background, on a medium darkness background, you probably got everything quite dark. Now, I finally filled most of my surface and made it quite dark. So now we can start working with a little bit more extra light. I've got some cadmium yellow. If you've got lemon yellow, it will be even easier for you because you will need less white. I have wiped my brush, but it's not overly clean, so it still gives me residue of my green, which is fine. And I'm going to get some white. First, kind of rub it into the bristles of my brush, so it almost cleans it, but also what we want from adding yellow tar paint is to have a small changes within our green. Okay, if I just directly mix emerald green with cadmium yellow, I will end up with beautiful grassy green, okay, which I don't really want. I want to have more cooler colors, more of that emerald green, more of the blues, and a small hint of the yellow. Cadmium yellow is very powerful in this kind of combination. So very small amount, a little bit at a time. Beautiful. That will be enough. Yeah. Not sure if you can see it strongly. Okay, that's might be one of my lightest tones. Might just put it as a little sample. Can put a little bit of white as well, but this is going to be one of my lightest tones. So I'm going to put a couple of shapes where I think they've got two lines here, maybe a little bit one lower, just planning it. They might be reduced in size. It will be easier for me to reduce them in size than totally lose them. And there is another group somewhere here. As we put in them as well in the area, they will start smudging with other colors and start being less bright. Right, so can I add a little bit more yellow and a little bit more green? Okay, that's quite a grassy green, but if I add more white, it starts being a bit more pastel-y, a little bit more white base. Okay, and now if I start adding it on top of some of my existing color, it's not going to look overly green, grassy type of green, because it will start mingling and mixing with my earlier blue and turquoise variations of color. Okay, that's why our play time is starting. I can make it lighter, I can make that variety, so maybe even spend a little bit of time on one of the columns. Now, I don't have to go into a lot of yellow. I can top it up a little bit, but I can just, within the first intake of the yellow, I could have just worked with that volume of yellow as well. Would have been plenty. But if you loosen it a little, the yellow disappears. Of course, bring some more fresher one as well. Okay, maybe a bit more bolder here, because I can see how it's could be smudging. Okay, how it's could be coming together. Good. Okay, let's see where this type of color could come. Okay, maybe around this area. And perhaps a little more cerulean with this yellowish green, just to make it slightly less into the yellow. And perhaps even just use your finger to stretch that color one way or the other. Yeah. Might give us that solution. Also, when we stretch the color, we flatten that thickness of the paint, especially if we're not too sure to keep it as it is or not. Is it going to be too light, too dark? So that little stretch, smudge, is something to work with in an easier way. Okay. So quite a lot of light. Can I just blend it a little more so it's there, but it's got some of intensity there. Okay, maybe my columns, the capitals. And each capital could have a slightly different light to it. So if you've done a specific, quite like a wider stroke and a narrow stroke at the top, maybe a narrow to medium stroke on the side, it just will give you that very much stage-like lightning, yeah? So go with that, play with that, see how it comes out on your work. Can I play with that light maybe at the top of the column and then it stops? Yeah, and if I can't do a straight line, maybe I'll do more of a straighter smudge. Okay, and I make another little light. Now, if I earlier on I counted my columns at the back, at this stage, if you'll end up with more or less, that's what I was starting with, fantastic, just play. If it feels right, yeah, and you wanted to add a bit more, I might add a little bit more on the other side. Something looks like it's happening, perhaps symmetrically, perhaps they're just other shapes in place. Metal structures supporting all these volumes of arches, little extra light. Okay. And again, come back to a little bit of yellow if you need to, or a little bit of white. I think I might make this column quite exciting. Stands out almost on a pedestal on its own. Maybe I'll just go with it. It's not meant to be like that, but maybe you will have some sort of connection. And I might add a little light next to it in the interior, behind it. That's it. That's an interesting space. So we started with a structure we've seen or recognized in a photograph, blocked some of the major darks, and identified some of the major mediums, perhaps possible lights. The nuances are at our own playful desire. Yeah, I can see some sort of line going across. If you wanted to add, some of you been painting with me, Sophia, and some of the lovely pattern work on the columns, early Christian, Orthodox designs. I might just add something of, I don't know, that might be too much, but if I smudge into that, I might just have a little more of a suggestion of it. So I'm almost working now within that little area, yeah? What's light going to be there? Can I add a bit more darkness in there? Let's get another brush. So I can have a lighter brush and a darker brush. Get back to my emerald green and violet. If I don't want to go solidly dark, I will pick a little bit of white with it. So then we can see some of the darkness. That's better. A little sharpness of that space, but not overly solid. But my column next to it could go slightly darker. And again, that column doesn't have to be all dark. I might just bring it slight shadow next to this space and then let it be again. Maybe the other side at the bottom will be darker here. Okay, so it's, that light is changing. It's not natural light, it's stage light. It's like Degas was painting his ballet dancers. It's a stage light. You have to be playful with it. Creative, that's what's exciting about it. Tiny bit more light here. I'm focusing on kind of on the space behind some of my larger big silhouettes of darkness. I can tweak, for example, this column is wobbly. If I start constantly tweaking it to the right size or not, it might be harder for me. But if I paint what's behind it first and then tweak it then, that might be easier. Okay, I'm quite happy with the space around this area. Right, anything else? A little bit of nuances, maybe sharpening the corners of some of the borders of color. Okay. Maybe I'll add more for the base, some division, some sharper division of the layers here. And can I paint a little bit more of the reflection? So Cistern, Basilica Cistern used to keep the water for very big quantities of gallons of water, on not just for during war times and siege times, but generally the water will be coming from the mountains and collecting in wet seasons and sustaining the town and growing population. Really, really well. Right, just want to make it a little bit more smudgy here. But when the Ottomans came to Istanbul, the part of the Muslim religion is stale water is not good water. If it's a running water, that's great. So if it's water in a pool and it doesn't move, it's not so good. So spaces like the water reservoirs have been banned or closed for a very long time. Just tiny bit touching up here, that's quite good. There's a bit of softness to it. Okay, can I connect any of these colors maybe now on the right hand side? Okay, we've got some of these lights. Okay, that's quite bold. Can I make it a little gentler? Mixing maybe some more blue with my yellowish green. Should put that one. Let's get a little more white here. Shadow. Looks quite a large detail for a less significant space. I would rather it's been a little bit lost here. Start again. I just paint it a little more even first. Find that space of a more neutral light. That color might have a little more light here. Okay, and that might be something else here as a little suggestion. Perhaps going in an ultramarine. I need a little extra white shortly. Okay, this is a little similar development of darkness, maybe a little variation again. Good. Maybe this space making it slightly darker to offset it. Now this is reflecting, it's harder to see, but I think I'll keep it partially light. Going towards the ceiling might be better as well. Okay, and maybe this column if I follow it. Darker lower part, but keeping it partially light above will be another different option. Right, and this one is quite a consistent line. Can I vary it? Okay. So I can't see if that is, this highlight is part of my column. Is that part of the interior or is it, yeah, which part is that? And it doesn't really matter. Okay. I want to have that confusion, illusion as part of our painting. Okay. Good, 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 good. Right, anything else lighter on the floor here? Looks a little bit similar. Maybe I'll just put a little more of a reflection. Maybe slightly larger reflective surface. Mhm. Yeah, maybe coming back to that water level. Just tiny bit of a lighter color coming in. It just placing it a little bit off center, a bit more on the right or a bit more on the left, or is it a little dab of a dot? It just makes that base of the column suddenly turning. Yeah, suddenly start looking more as a water, as a water feature, as a water surface. Right, I might do oh, around, which is not there, but again, I'm interested to add a little bit of my elements. Sometimes it's come out really well, sometimes it doesn't. So I have to take that gamble. I think it would have been good if my lines would have been more straighter. Right, and for my corner here, I'll have a smaller brush for highlights as well. So I'm gonna continue a little bit with my larger brush. Right, I needed some white here. I'm going to work more on that focal point area and that extra light lit up area. So I can use a smaller brush as well. So I'm gonna have two brushes and a go for light and one for extra one for the darks. So before going to nuances, let's double check any other lights we want in a reflection. Okay, so maybe somewhere here, this lighter tone could come down. And perhaps one of the lines could be stretched out as well. And also, as we have a very dark column, or we want to keep it quite dark, I might exaggerate some of the shadows later. I might bring a little more, just testing my tones, how this medium color will be next to my darker column. And then I can work more highlights or extra shadows around it as well. So I think I'm going to keep that one there. Okay. So big spaces, what I haven't painted, some of these areas. Can make them all darker again. I think darker might be nice. Or I could keep them partially, or almost the same as they are at the moment. I think if I paint them darker and then put some light catching perhaps on the brickwork, on some detail work. Okay, slightly darker, but not quite as dark. I can make this area back to the shadow. Okay, maybe a little border will have tiny bit of darkness. That's what's the beauty part of the oils. Our borders smudge lovely into the shape, so we never have just an outline, it becomes that shape. If I need to sharpen in something on my light, I'm gonna paint a shadow next to it instead. Yeah. Not quite straight, but my board is on the slant for the camera to avoid reflection, so it has a little wobble. Hopefully it's not wobbly on the actual painting. I think that's okay. Partially okay, and I think I can smudge this slightly more confident now. Okay, to have that suggestive element. Again, a little bit of something sharper. We can continue varying our colors, maybe direct emerald green and white, maybe a little bit of fresher blue. Maybe a little more white, so it starts to have differences in dark as well. Because we're starting to use smaller brushes and be scared of wiping them off. Yes, we have quite a lot of paint then disappearing into our tissue, into going into the rubbish, going in the rubbish bin, but keeping the paint on the tip of the brush will give you more precise lines. Okay, maybe more yellow with my white and whatever's left of the green. Then create a little bit of my own light by doing little dabs, going further away or appearing somewhere close to us. Might catch that playfulness of the light on them. Capitals, almost like little dabs of dots. Almost creating, is that perspective? Is that connection of light? Is that, yeah? Is that the actual light where it's coming from? Making it just a little more varied, busy, defined as a detail. Like that. Smudge as much. Okay. Right, so highlights, highlights, highlights. Any other highlights anywhere else? Okay, nice playful light, which I can start tweaking by bringing extra dark. So just even using a clean brush to tame it slightly. So this is just a clean brush, lifting some of the chunks of the paint. And let's do a tiny bit of the silhouette of the columns base. adding my straighter lines or making my lines into straighter ones, a little more straighter ones. I'm going for direct violet, maybe tiny bit of black with my violet. If I'm happy to introduce a more solid darkness. If in doubt, have a small amount of, like a partial green or paler blue instead of direct white. So then you'll have a softer change of color. Okay, so that's not dark enough, so maybe back to my violet here. It's good. Little bit of darkness of the violet and very small amount of Payne's gray. Just on some of the borders here of the dark, the border of the shadow. Emerald green, cerulean blue. Getting quite liking this extra emerald green. I want to come a little more towards the light and perhaps stop. Just got that shininess to that column. It's there and then it stops. Yeah, that surface changes. This one might have a light for the water. It's slightly easier to paint the wider strokes. To blend them to make that volume for the column widths. Violet is really good for me today. Beautifully working with my green, working really well as an extra darker component to the painting. And slightly tiny bit more darker here with my violet. Just want to offset this corner. Yeah, maybe paint the darker tone on the background next. Okay. Looking for more pleasant shapes, pleasant line, pleasant pattern, or range of that pattern within different elements, different parts of the painting. Trying to see the whole picture together, and I'm also trying to see certain individual areas as harmonious, lovely rhythm. These are a little too similar widths. Okay, come up to dark. Just touching up how much of those dotted lights I want. Sometimes I quite like leaving a stroke. I'm considering letting it be for a while, painting around, constantly referencing kind of how it will be if it's were to remain, and then finally making decision. Okay, it needs to go or it need to remain, need to be enlarged. So that's what I'm doing now, playing with my suggestion of smaller lights and larger lights here. It's quite nice. A wider stroke for the light. I can make my column back to shape darker. Right, anything else? Just looking for little things. I think I'm quite happy overall, but tweaking any smaller elements which are slightly harder to work with because of the nature, how straight or less straight the shapes can be. I'm not too sure about this. Almost ahead. Okay, maybe I need a little connection of other arches or lines, or that space looks better. That's it. That's better. Tiny bit of darker, but even at the here, that's getting more exciting and believable. I just double checking if I need any other areas painted. I just spotted that I have not touched a couple of corners here, here. Right, I wanted a little more darkening of my some of the main columns. I've done this one slightly darker. I might just straighten this part here. Maybe get a little more sharper contrast. I quite like this corner darker. Okay, and maybe again reverse the darkness on the opposite side. Again, almost just sketching the shadow. Just double checking this is straight. I might need to put my picture upwards rather than having on the table. You see that? Straight. Right, where's this little wobble? Okay, and then final darkening, I think, for this side column still. Thought I might get away with it a bit paler, but I think it would be best if I were to make it slightly darker. Maybe partially lighter somewhere midway. And again, double checking its darkness. A little blend. I was playing with the idea of reflective surface, but I think the simpler it is, the better, not over smudging or over bringing too much okay. It's better. That's better now. This else blend in here a little bit. I think I'm happy to stop. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you had a good exploration of mixing your greens and your turquoise. You have loads of extra light as well as some beautiful shadows. And just keep stepping away from your picture and analyzing that light. You probably had enough of looking at the photograph. Just look what you have and maybe taking a photograph, maybe looking at it even upside down. It might give you some ideas where some of the contrasts might be a little different and you might want to put a little accent of light. Or maybe something where you want to soften something and take less attention, put the attention elsewhere. But well done for today, and I look forward to seeing your work and look forward to painting with you again soon. Thank you.